There's actually a lot of studies about this from like Harvard Business School, for example, that people make emotional buying decisions up to 95% of the time. We also work with a lot of brands that rely on heavy brand reputation for their sales. And those brands also are leaving tens of millions of dollars, billions of dollars on the table by not optimizing their website for users, for the way that humans communicate, what their preferences are, to address their needs, to address their questions, like Death Water. They have water in a can. Who puts water in a can? It's just plain water. It's not carbonated. It's not mineral water. It's plain water. Yes, it's filtered water, but who puts it in a can? And then with their marketing, it's quite different. So they decided from a marketing standpoint to become a disruptor in the market.
Hello, everyone. We are live today with Melissa Van Rickley, the founder of CRO Digital Marketing, a conversion rate optimization agency for Shopify and DTC brands. With nearly 2 decades of experience and over 150 brands optimized, Melissa has developed the behavior-driven CRO trademark, and it's a psychology-based framework that goes far beyond the surface level fixes. And Melissa is defining the e-commerce growth for this century and the years to come. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. And thank you for that introduction.
You are
Good
welcome.
to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be here as well. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, I help businesses from e-commerce, D2C, especially Shopify brands and those on WordPress, help to grow their sales and leads through conversion rate optimization by understanding how people think, feel, and buy from their brand. So we do this through conversion rate optimization. And as you pointed out, we take a behavior approach. And this results in a lot of success for our clients.
Wow, brilliant, brilliant. When did that conviction really solidify for you that this is what the business actually need versus the traditional digital marketing support?
Yeah, good question. So early in my career, I started to notice some patterns pretty early on when I was working with clients back in my agency days. At that time, we were generating quite a substantial amount of traffic to a lot of our large e-commerce clients that had stores, and they were pretty excited about the level of traffic that we were able to generate for them through SEO and PPC, so search engine optimization and paid ads. At the time, though, I noticed that a lot of the efforts that the companies we were working with were focused on, aside from our recommendations, which were a little bit more holistic, they would focus in certain areas that would help to generate that traffic. But we noticed that they didn't always implement, or we couldn't, from a phased approach, always implement everything at once. You do take phases when you start implementing. So we noticed without the actual implementation on the website, the traffic would be generated and come into the website, but the traffic didn't convert. So I noticed pretty early on how important it was to create that on-page experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of our clients still come to us to this day saying, hey, we were able to generate traffic coming into our website, but it's not converting. So I noticed that pattern pretty early on, and that still resonates with what our clients come to us for help with nowadays.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really clear and honest way to trace where this whole thing came from. Yeah, because the traditional digital marketing can keep a business busy without moving it forward. And There's always another campaign to run, another channel to test, metric, checking up on metrics and etc. But being busy and being effective are actually two different things. And the founders who figured that out early stop asking, what should we launch next? And they start asking something like, why isn't what we have already working? So yeah, that's a really brilliant idea around what you build with the CRO digital marketing.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of founders are, they launch something and that's great. You know, um, we always have that kind of phrase in society that failing is not an option. We shouldn't fail. But
Yeah.
there are a lot of acronyms out there that people break down, what failing actually means. But one of those, letters in the acronym stands for learning.
Wow.
So launching and learning and then coming back and iterating is exactly how successful businesses uh, succeed
Mm,
ultimately, is that they're constantly learning, they're constantly evolving. So launching with something, then coming back and reevaluating is an iterative process. Even as humans, we should be continuing to learn in life, and that's no
yeah.
different with a business and no different with a website. That should be a living and breathing organism, if you will.
Yeah. It always comes to learning, and yeah, everything is a learning process. Yeah.
Yes.
So, given today's theme on the challenges facing startup founders, you've worked closely with early stage businesses and helped a lot of businesses scale their brands. From your perspective, what what's the biggest misconceptions founders have about digital growth in their early stages?
Uh, that's also a really good question. I actually get this quite a bit. You know, a lot of times people, I think, really underestimate the I labeled the website as like a living organism. And I think that that is something that a lot of founders probably don't understand. I do think that marketing is a little bit of this kind of abstract sort of concept to a lot of people. I think that people underestimate the amount of psychology that goes into connecting with people. I think that a lot of it is very subconscious.
Yeah.
There's actually a lot of studies about this from Harvard Business School, for example, that people make emotional buying decisions up to 95% of the time. There are many other studies that also look at this, and they value this maybe a little bit less, but a majority of folks, again, depending on which study you look at, they all rate emotional buying decisions as the primary driver of what drives purchases. So
Yeah.
this is subconscious. It's not really something that people can easily describe or talk about. And so, when they look at their website, they look at the website from an internal lens. What
Mhm.
that means is they look at the website and their marketing from a business perspective,
Yeah.
meaning, function. Does
Yeah.
this describe our product? Does it have our product? Can they purchase from a technical perspective?
Mhm.
They think we have great photography. It showcases our products in a very artistic way. It has good lighting. Our product is on a white background.
Yeah.
They think of their websites from a functional and business perspective.
Mhm.
Yet we are all consumers. So, but it's very hard, I think, for businesses, even as a marketer, when I worked in-house, at an agency as well as in-house client side, it's very difficult for any team, myself working on the marketing team, but working with sales teams, working with customer service teams, working with executives, working with IT and web developers. It's very difficult no matter what, level or organizational structure you sit in within that organization,
Yeah.
to look at your marketing as an outsider or as a consumer.
Yeah.
We tend to look at things from that internal perspective. So I think a lot of people, when they think about their marketing and their website, they really have no idea what is breaking down the conversions, what is creating hesitation, what is creating confusion. And so a lot of times they think that it's maybe a light switch, meaning it's like one thing and then everything is going to change if we just change that one thing. And honestly, humans are much more complex than that. As humans, we have a lot of layers. We could go into a lot of analogies regarding that, but we have a lot of layers. But actually, there are a lot of scientific studies. I pointed out one of them, but there's a whole study around neuroscience and in marketing, and how, at least from my perspective, although I'm a little bit biased to an extent, being in conversion rate optimization, I do think very customer centrically. But neuroscience and conversion rate optimization to me are one and the same. So you can't do conversion rate optimization if you don't understand how human brains are wired, and
Yeah.
that as humans, we exhibit patterns, whether we recognize them consciously or subconsciously, they exist.
Yeah.
And even if we don't necessarily want to admit, we buy based off purchase decisions, even though we would like to tell ourselves that we buy off logic. Logic plays more or less of a role into purchase decisions based on if it's B2B or
Yeah.
D2C, or what the cost of the product or service is. That logic plays more or less into the decision. But at the end of the day, no matter the price point, no matter the audience, if it's B2B, D2C, it is still an emotional purchase decision a majority of the time. So we think that businesses ultimately underestimate how many layers there are to communicating and to improving things and reducing that hesitation, reducing that confusion on websites. But, of course, but also into ads and all of the communications that we put out there. And they also don't realize that they're looking at things from a very internal lens and not from a customer lens, even though we are all customers. So
Wow. That's a really clear way to put it. And what you are describing connects to something that I have noticed too, because a lot of founders treat digital growth like a switch. They assume spending money on ads or building a website is the same as having a strategy. But both perspectives are actually completely different activities. Yeah, while one may produce activity, the other produces the results. And the founders who figures out early tend to stop chasing output and start asking whether their foundation is actually set up to convert what they are already getting.
yeah. And we work with a lot of founders that are just starting out that want that good foundation going into things. That reduces risky decision making, that reduces wasted ad spend, it reduces time. Time is money.
Yeah.
If you're spending money on ads and running those ads, but they're not converting, that's money. So, from whether you start at the ground up or you've been in business for 10 years and you're looking for a fresh start, it's never really too late to get that kind of fresh start, or that, new pair of glasses or that new lens to kind of look at things differently and make that change. We also work with a lot of brands that rely on heavy brand reputation for their sales. And those brands also are leaving tens of millions of dollars, billions of dollars on the table by not optimizing their website for users, for the way that humans communicate, what their preferences are, to address their needs, to address their questions. They're leaving that on the table because their website is not optimized. And they lose those customers typically to another brand that may or may not have the same brand reputation, but they may be doing a better job of, answering those questions and meeting their customers' needs.
Wow. Mm. Thank you for that elaboration. That was really powerful. Wow. And a lot of founders describe the first year as a gap between what they imagine and what actually showed up. So, and I wanna ask, what was the biggest thing that blindsided you early on? Something you thought you had figured out, but turned out to be completely different when you went in the game.
Yeah. So that's a good question as well. So something that totally blindsided me. There's actually a few things. The first thing is that at first I thought that, conversions, back when I was noticing these patterns, when I very first started noticing these patterns, something that I guess, yeah, definitely blindsided me was that looking at a website and trying to meet your customers' needs on the website or in ads or through email or really any communications, even if that's organic social content, for example, is how much marketing, like general marketing knowledge that it requires. Um, and also where that actually starts.
Mhm.
So, for example, someone coming in like just wanting to learn about CRO, conversion rate optimization, or, how to improve conversions on a website, never mind the specialty. But if a business is coming in and looking for how can I improve conversions on the website, one thing that's kind of blindsided me is that it really starts from like a business development standpoint and illustrating what that brand is in a way that that customers can understand. So basically translating the business's vision and their product catalog into what that means for a user. But a lot of businesses really do that kind of in the reverse. They think, oh, this is a good product because there's a product out there, or I have an idea for a product, so let's bring it to market. But they don't think about what it means to have brand positioning, how important brand aesthetic is.
Mhm.
They don't think about, how you can bring that product to market, how you would position that product in the market to compete with other products. Are
Mhm.
you competing with the same exact product at the same exact price point, targeting the same exact audience?
Mhm.
Or do you have something different about you? So, we can think of a lot of different brands out there that, like Death Water. They have water in a can. Who puts water in a can? It's just plain water. It's not carbonated. It's not mineral water. It's plain water. Yes, it's filtered water, but who puts it in a can? And then with their marketing, it's quite different. So they decided from a marketing standpoint to become a disruptor in the market. Now, not every brand decides to make that kind of decision towards being a disruptor. But if you're not a disruptor, then how do you compete? And I think that,
Yeah.
what blindsided me is that founders and those at the top, executives, including CMOs, chief marketing officers, to CEOs, chief executive officers, to even brand managers, directors, everyone in between. They still don't understand what is their positioning in the market. And to me, it's been kind of interesting to see that a lot of the brands that I work with don't quite understand that. So I feel like I have to kind of see through that a little bit and be able to kind of pick out those points about their product that they may not even realize,
Mhm.
or they think that they're communicating those really well already. And so what I wasn't really prepared for was how much of my effort I have to put into understanding that, because that's the first question that people ask when they come to a website. Why should I buy this, and what makes it different, or how does it improve my life,
Wow.
or all of those questions. We go to a website, whether we acknowledge it or not, and say, why should I buy this product from them? What makes their product different? Why don't I just go to this other brand over here? Their product might be more or less expensive. So if you take price out of the equation, then what is the difference in the product? Is it just price? Is price the main differentiator? So that's been something that's been a little bit surprising to me, is the amount of understanding or framework that doesn't exist amongst a lot of brands. And I find that they simply don't know their product very well.
Uh-huh.
Or they do know their product, but they're not articulating it. And that also comes from the top and trickles down throughout the entire organization. So brand founders and owners out there, if you're thinking about, how can I improve sales from my brand? Well, that comes from the leadership position
Yeah.
on down. So looking at, how can I compete in the market? What makes my product unique, different, or better? Is that based on price? Is that based on quality? Is that based on, I offer a guarantee, I offer better customer service, I offer more colors, our design is just slightly better. Or if there's nothing, if all things are equal, then maybe your differentiator is you just do better marketing. You just communicate better.
Hmm.
I have some running shoes clients, and looking at, all the big names out there, Hoka, On, Topo, what
Yeah.
have you, New Balance. Um, a lot of times they're not necessarily all that different in terms of engineering or design into the shoes. Some of those brands also look almost identical in terms of aesthetics. So really, and they're all similar price points. So really, what is different? Well, Hoka does a really good job of explaining their products, breaking down what that means, not just from a specification standpoint, but what that means to wear the shoes. How do those shoes feel when you're wearing them? No, and not just right away, but over long term. So, um, if you do a better job with your marketing, and everything in about your product is materially similar or the same exactly, at least you can do a better job marketing and communicating. So,
Wow, wow, wow. And it's something that stands out to me from what you said was the fact that brands come to you and they don't know how to communicate it well. It sounds a bit delusional because I mean I am holding the vision of the brand. I dreamt of it. Why is it difficult for me to speak it out well to the people who are buying? But then you as a professional will have to help me communicate it. Um, what's the real thing behind that
yeah.
reality?
Yeah, I think okay, so this gets into a little bit more of, neuroscience, but I think that comes from a functional perspective. Within organizations, we tend to think, we have a to-do list and we need to get through these items, and we're also managing people. We have employees, so we're managing. So I think we get stuck in like the day-to-day
Yeah.
kind of function perspective of things, running a business, managing a department,
Mhm.
managing tasks and strategies, if you will. And I think that we just get so kind of in the weeds and focused on those that we lose sight of the bigger picture. And so that bigger picture is more important than people think. And I think that they also see themselves as being those visionaries that do keep in perspective that bigger picture. However, they're not thinking about things from a customer perspective. But I do think that a lot of it is it's difficult as humans, for us to articulate our emotions, our feelings. It's difficult for us to put things into words. So if you ask almost any influencer out there, even the Kim Kardashians of the world, they will probably still share the same challenges in terms of, how do I communicate this?
Yeah.
Or, a lot of things I think with practice become easier, of course, with all things that we practice. But I still think that's an inherent challenge within humans, is to communicate in a way that others can understand. And, internally, when we're a CMO or a manager, marketing manager, or a CEO, people also absorb information differently. So I think they also feel like, how do I communicate that in a way that makes sense to my audience? And I think that's the challenge. So it's, just being able to communicate, knowing how to do that, why to do that, what do we need to say? How do we say that? There's a lot that goes into that. And, one of the things that I think is really helpful with brands that I've worked with is that we do user testing. And what I mean by user testing, there's a lot of ways to do user testing, but user testing in the sense that the users give us feedback in their words. So this requires us as, facilitators of this kind of interview or questionnaire or, interview process, that we don't lead them necessarily to answer a certain way. We want them to answer naturally, the way that they would normally answer. So that also becomes a little challenging, because as humans, we just have inherent biases. That's just how we are. So being able to communicate in a way with testers that doesn't lead them to choose words or communicate something in a way that wouldn't be natural to them. And then also for us, I think it's hard when we work within an organization. Again, we still have that internal lens. So we still put their words as users through the testing process, through the perspective of, we already are doing that. Check mark. We're done with that. Strike through. We're off our list because we're so, function. We need to get this done. So we don't really listen very well to those folks that are giving us that feedback. So between function and looking at things through our own lens and thinking that we are looking at the bigger picture, when, we may not understand what that picture should look like, that bigger picture should look like, or a framework for what that should look like. I think that leads us to, and then communication challenges. How do we say that? What words do we use? But going back to previous questions, kind of towards the start of our conversation, putting something out there, seeing how people respond to it. If that doesn't work, change it up. Look at how you're listening. Are you listening with a truly open mind? A lot of us say that, but we don't. So trying to just literally kind of copy and paste their words can be really helpful. And that's a lot of times exactly how organizations should communicate, is using the same language that their customers use, so that the business sounds exactly like their customers. Like, the business is the customer. That's what you're really going after. So
Wow. The business is the customer, and it always comes back to communication. Lack of communication can be destructive. So that's a great point made, the communication, and also looking at it from the functional perspective is something that indeed a lot of founders struggle there. And you may have the best idea, but communication is always the key. Without communication, you can never connect with your customers. So a great point there.
yeah.
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 And
Communication is everything. It drives our society, our world. And so how we communicate is important. The words that we use are important. I know when I was growing up, you're told when you're a child, those words don't matter. They do matter.
yeah.
They matter a lot.
Yeah. Very true. The landscape is shifting fast nowadays. AI is changing, was automatable. Attribution is harder to trust, and the economics of paid acquisition keeps uh, punishing brands that haven't fixed what happens after the click. Given all these movements that are going on in the modern business AI world, where are you placing your strategic bets for CRO digital marketing over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yes, AI. I know it's a hot topic these days. Personally and professionally, I see AI as another tool in my tool belt as a professional. So, what that means is I see AI as like spell check, as Grammarly to check our grammar.
Yeah.
I don't see it really any different. AI has another, not to minimize AI and the impact of AI, because I think that does fundamentally impact our society quite a bit. We can also equate it to the invention of computers versus a typewriter or writing things down with pen and paper. So it's quite foundational in terms of the huge shift that AI has within our society and also the implications that come along with that. But at the same time, I do see it as a tool. I do think that the way that we are right now, I don't want to speak too far into the future with AI because I don't have a crystal ball to understand what's coming next down the pipe with AI and whether that replaces humans or not. But I do see AI currently as potentially replacing some ways of operating from a human equity standpoint, but it doesn't replace humans entirely. So, what I mean by that is, a good example is communicating. A lot of marketers do use AI to help them generate content and copywriting. I should explain content and copy because as a more senior marketer, I've learned the difference between the two. I see content as subjects and topics and just an overall concept, whereas copy or copywriting are the literal words that you use. Um, from analog days, it's kind of like the words on the paper. So
Yeah.
the word that you literally choose to use. You can't have copywriting without content, and you can't have content without copywriting, but they're two distinct different things. A good way to differentiate them is content and copy. Content, you have the same content, but the copy can be written a million or infinite different ways, but still have the same content or topic or subject. It's just how you present that can be described a million different ways. So going back to our last question, what are the things that I see as kind of a challenge and why, businesses don't communicate better? It's because they may understand the concept, the topic, the subject, but they don't know how to translate that into copy. So when it comes to copy, I see AI as being very instrumental in being able to support content creation, again, from a topic and subject perspective, that strategy, and then also from a copywriting perspective. So, for example, when you use AI, if you were to put in a generic prompt, and I've heard the term positioned out there called prompt engineering. So, prompt engineering is, if you think about it I'm very analytical, but I'm also very creative. So, I tend to think like an engineer a little bit. And so prompt engineering from what are the content or subjects or topics that I want AI to help me with? So what are the talking points, if you will, that I need to put into AI to help generate an output for me by using an AI tool, let's say ChatGPT. So by putting in those kind of inputs, for example, a lot of marketers we use for content and copy creation, we use AI. If marketers out there are not using AI, then at least for some form of support, to help flesh out ideas, to help generate ideas, to help narrow down ideas, to help brainstorm for any part in the process, then I think that, they're going to get left behind at some point. So when it comes to AI, just generally speaking, there are many use cases for AI. Again, it doesn't replace human capital, human equity, but I see it as being, again, like any other tool out there to help make us more productive, like a computer did.
Yeah.
At some point we were using typewriters and pen and paper and Rolodexes, and now we have a handheld computer. So I see AI as being that fundamental and different. So within the next 2 to 3 years, I see a lot of folks utilizing AI more for everyday productivity increases.
Yeah.
As humans, we're always looking to improve. So using it for that. When it comes to CRO, conversion rate optimization, there is no tool out there that can provide you, AI, I'm talking, can provide you with an audit of your website. Now, you can use AI to, currently that exists. Now, you can use AI to help you create kind of micro strategies and evaluate some of the strategies you're using. It can help you with content creation. It can help you with copywriting generation. But again, it depends on the input. And at the end of the day, an AI tool is a robot.
Yeah.
So it needs to be programmed. You have to think about what are the prompts that you're using. So again, going back to prompt engineering, how are you creating your prompts so that you're not getting a generic output out of AI? If you put in a generic prompt into AI, you're going to get a generic response. Even if you're specific, and I've experienced this quite a bit, it's actually kind of comical, is that I find that sometimes a lot of people use the term hallucinate, but I like to use the term delusional, which I think has a stronger effect.
Yeah.
But sometimes, AI gets it wrong. I see 30 to 50% of the time, especially in my line of work, that they get it wrong. And I use it for everyday questions as well. If I'm researching a supplement to take, or I'm, wanting a recipe, and, sometimes I kind of catch it and think that's not going to work. Whether I've tried it and experienced it, that's bogus, or just from my own experience that I know that that's just not going to work. And it's comical to me because it comes back and says, "Oops, sorry, my bad. Oh yeah, you're so right. Let me have another go at it."
The robot
And
made a mistake.
So I think that people need to understand within 2 to 3 years, it is a productivity tool, but it does have its limitations in the current form. So being aware of what those limitations are and not treating it as, the end all to everything, you still have to use your own human filter for it. And at this point in time, I don't see it. I mean, if I could see it replacing people that, one, don't use it, and two, don't use best practices, aren't looking to learn or evolve. I can see it replacing those people. But I do also understand it does replace currently some humans in certain work capacities. But like everything else, I think that causes us to want to level up our experience. But I also do understand that there are some industries that's just flat out impacted, the human capital side of things, period, full stop. So.
Wow, wonderful insight, wonderful insight. And it all comes back to the fact that the technology, that's the AI, it has value when the foundation underneath is solid. That's actually the baseline, because if your business's foundation isn't set right, AI will just make things worse, and will make things generic for you, and you wouldn't like it as well. So yeah, that was a really tough insight. So looking to the next 2 to 3 years, what does success look like for CRO digital marketing? Where are you taking it to the next level?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about the future for CRO in general as an industry. I think that kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of that brand positioning and communicating,
Yeah.
I think that as humans, I'm kind of as a marketer, I think we have a certain personality type, and my personality is, I think, one of many marketers, but it's pretty, I'm not completely introspective to the point that it's too far, but I am pretty introspective in terms of being able to look at myself in the mirror, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I think that being able to communicate, how we present ourselves to the world is our brand. How we carry ourselves, how we present ourselves, how we communicate, word choices, life choices, those are all part of our brand. And I think from my perspective in conversion rate optimization, I would love to see it become a little bit more mainstream and influence businesses to do a better job of communicating, less from that internal perspective, but more outwardly as customers, as consumers, because we all are. I would love to see, I think that the shift in SEO right now, search engine optimization, with the new AI coming on board, 2 years ago, if you were doing SEO, and there are still some SEO professionals out there who are still doing SEO the old school way,
Yeah.
where it's basically keyword matching.
Uh-huh.
Someone types in a keyword and you're trying to appear for that keyword. If you're still doing keyword matching, you are already left behind.
Yeah.
You are still using a typewriter. You're still using a Rolodex versus a smartphone. So, I think that nowadays we need to do a better job of communicating. When I got my start at an agency, we were an SEO and paid ads shop. So, and web development as well. And we did some PR, but this was for SEO purposes. It was keyword matching. Pretty early on, like I said, the pattern that I saw was that if you optimize only for search engines, you're not going to get those conversions.
Uh-huh.
So if you continue to operate like that, and this was, I'm going to age myself, but that was 20 years ago. If you're still doing that, and this was 2 years ago, or currently doing that,
Yeah.
you're left behind. You're not communicating. You're communicating to a robot. You're not communicating to your customers. Your
Yeah.
customers, now SEO is kind of mainstream. People understand, oh, they're doing that for the search engines. We've all come across those websites. Oh, they put that there. It's strange, but they put that there for search engines. So I think that is, if we can do a better job of communicating to users and less to robots, of course, still using AI, but I'm talking about, appealing to Google. Google now uses AI answers and they take up a lot of real estate on the SERPs, on the search engine results page. Those speak to users. Now there is generative, optimization that you want to, transition your SEO strategy towards, because that helps. Those are helpful. So basically, Google, what they've done is, instead of the keyword matching, they've introduced the AI that is a much more human way of communicating. So businesses now, this is, if you don't have a sign, and if there's not enough signs out there so far, let this be your sign.
Yeah.
Communicate with users. You can do that again in a way that also appeals to robots, to AI, but it's a nuance. It's not, before the keyword matching, it gets very, talk to a robot, sound like a robot. Versus now the nuance between humans and robots is a lot closer.
Yeah.
And sounds so much better. So I would love to see the transition towards businesses, being communicating better with one another, and then everyone achieves their goals. I mean, honestly, as customers, we come to a website and we want to buy your product. That's why we're there.
Yeah.
We want to engage with your business. We want to, buy from you, but you need to give us a reason to buy.
That's right.
You need to communicate with me in a way that I want to be communicated with. I want your business to sound like you understand me. I want to feel understood by your business.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Let's communicate with humans to humans, and less
yeah.
humans to robots, and then we pick the robots and then we give the robot answer to the human.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I love AI. I use it as part of my everyday, but it still doesn't replace humans.
Yeah.
As much as, yes, again, in some industries that has, happened for sure. But I think as humans, we need to level up to some degree and understand the role of AI as it currently is right now. And constantly improve and work on ourselves and look at ourselves in the mirror.
Wow, that's such a brilliant wisdom out there. Thank you very much, Melissa. That was really mind-blowing insight. Thank you very much. So do you have any last remarks for the audience?
Ooh, a good question. Yeah. If you would like to learn a little bit more about conversion rate optimization, you can follow me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Also, you can find me at my website, crodigitalmarketing.com. And I post blog articles regularly. If you're looking for help to improve sales growth for your business, whether that's e-commerce or service-based business, we work with a range of industries, service-based to product-based businesses as well. We're definitely available and would love to help you reach your sales growth goals.
Brilliant. Also, guys, I'll put Melissa's link in the description below so you can reach out to her and feel free to explore CRO Digital Marketing's website as well. Connect with her on LinkedIn and get your things aligned. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that will be a wrap for today, guys. I believe today's message resonated with you, and you know how to navigate your way in communicating your brand to your customers. So, thank you for having time with me once again, Melissa. Thank you very much. Your insights were really valuable, and that was a mastermind there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You're
So
welcome.
good to be here. Glad to
Guys,
be a
I'll
part of
see
it.
you in the next episode. Remember, we are here to keep on learning and growing as a community. So we will get in touch. Bye.
Bye-bye.